everybody. Welcome to Busy Living Sober with Elizabeth Chance. And I'm really excited for today's podcast because I have author Meg Geisewite. Did I say it right?
Did it right. Way to
I'm
go.
excited.
It's a
And
mouthful.
if you're watching this on YouTube or maybe even seeing the clip on Instagram or whatever, YouTube, whatever, here's her book, Intoxicating Lies. I'm so excited to have you on because a lot of my listeners will know that last week I had on Sassy Sober, and now I have you on, and I'm finding it very interesting. This new gray drinking area, I find it very interesting because I got sober in 2006. So it's been a journey for me. It's been 17 years. My kids were really little. Now they're all gone and blown the coop. And now this new generation, you moms, have come up with your own language that is resonating so much. And I'll tell you this, I have a friend. She's actually a niece of one of my closest friends. And she lives in Delaware actually too. She lives at the beach. She
What
lives
are
at the
the
beach in
chances?
Delaware. And she said she did dry January and she hasn't drank since then, since last January. So now what is it? 9 months. It's almost 10 months, right?
Right.
And she loves your book. And she
Oh,
said, I read this book and it was so amazing. And she's like, I haven't drank and I can't believe I haven't drank. And
oh.
so I want you to explain, even though I had, someone else explain it. I want you to explain, for one, what was your journey like? Where did you, because when I read your book, it was like I was reading my story, like literally. Before we started recording, you guys, I was like, oh my God, Meg, like we came from the same sort of background. My drinking was the same exact way. My parents got divorced. I ended up, though, I got divorced as well, but
Mhm.
you haven't gotten divorced. Tell us your story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And second of all, what a great testimonial. Those are the things that just make my heart swell with joy to hear that she read the book and quit drinking. And that is probably the feedback that I hear the most is exactly what you're saying is I saw myself in your story. Your story is my story. And so that was really the goal of the book was to make someone feel seen. A lot of the books out there, they're great and they helped me, but I couldn't relate to kind of the rock bottom drinking stories. I felt like I was stuck in what's called, and it is in the medical literature, gray area drinking, which is on the alcohol use disorder spectrum. But as a society, we really kind of label everybody up as a normal drinker or this rock bottom, just end stage drinking. And what we're not talking enough about is this middle space that is vast and wide on the alcohol use disorder spectrum that most people are caught in. And that's why we need so many of these stories because you could be a different shade of gray, you could be darker or lighter. And we need all of those stories out there so that we can say, oh, that's me. Oh, I get the permission slip to explore my relationship with alcohol. And so when I heard this term gray area drinking, it was like the first time that I felt seen. I was like, wait, I think this is me. And I had felt trapped and confused for a long time. So my story really starts to what you and I were talking about. When I was a little girl, my parents, my mom used to dress me up in my best Jessica McClintock dress. If you remember that, I'm aging myself now. I just turned 50. And my parents ran in this country club scene, which appearances were just of the utmost importance. And your reputation and what you looked like, and really kind of what I saw at an early age is this was a way of connecting with other people. And my mom was pretty much a single mom during the week where my dad was traveling a lot and she had 3 kids. And so the way for her to let off steam and my dad after working all week was let's go to a cocktail party or have a cocktail party. So alcohol was in in my house or around me at a very young age. And the messages I was getting is, this is how you have fun. This is how you unwind. This is how you connect with other people. And, I was serving hors d'oeuvres to these inebriated guests at our house and trying to look perfect at the same time. And then I got into modeling. And again, the message of the way that you look is your value, is your worth. And I started becoming more entrenched in that. And really, pretty much through high school and even college, it was this social type of binge drinking, when I could be with my friends. Nothing was really a problem. But when I got to college, and I won't go into it here just for trigger warnings, but I had some sexual assaults, which catapulted me into this unworthy feeling about myself. And I started compensating for that trauma by overdoing. So finding more and more worth in my looks. I actually got into aesthetic sales, medical sales, where I was selling women on their appearance and drinking the Kool-Aid myself. It was a high pressure sales environment where it was work hard, play hard, lots of drinking involved. And then I had a second incident that happened to me post college that really just further ingrained all of this trauma into me. And I didn't even really realize that at the time, that this overdoing and not feeling enough was being compensated by really just high functioning, keeping myself busy, as well as trying to escape all that busyness because it's exhausting, trying to look perfect, be perfect, in alcohol. And so I ended up meeting my husband in sales. We're both in pharmaceutical sales, and drinking was really at the center of our relationship. It was very much of the sales culture that we lived in. And so continued to just kind of use it socially. And then we had two kids, and I really fell into the mommy wine culture. I would come home after taking care of my doctors and the staff all day, and I would be exhausted, but then I had to take care of the kids and the house. And I started finding rest and escape in my nightly reward of wine, which I thought was my self-care. And that just kind of kept going. I bought into all the tea towels and the messages that normalized it, that said behind every great mom is a bottle of wine. And so I thought I was doing, kind of what everybody did. And I drank much like my friends. No one ever told me I had a problem. I had a friend in high school who died in a drinking and driving accident, so I never drank and drove. I never really hit a rock bottom. In fact, I was winning awards at work. I was doing well at home. My marriage was thriving. My kids were thriving. So on the outside, everything looked really normal. And then I had three back-to-back life incidences that happened 2 weeks apart. And I talk about it in my book. And it catapulted my drinking. So that friend that had been by my side as a coping mechanism now became, instead of the social recreational use, to a medicinal use, because I was so overwhelmed with anxiety and anger, and just not really understanding how to regulate my nervous system in any other way than alcohol, because that's what society had told us, right? You're really stressed out, have a drink. And it became this nightly habit. And I started just feeling every day in a slight fog. It was never like on occasion I'd have a really bad hangover, but for the most part, it was just like I was still functioning. I was still going through my day, but it was becoming such a part of my life. I was so stuck in this gray area of drinking that that slight fog almost was a normal color for me day in and day out. And I was starting to get sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I finally, after going to my therapist about these three life incidences that had happened, I said to her, finally got the courage. And I said, I think I might have a drinking problem. And she was like, and I explained to her this detox to retox loop that I was stuck in, this maddening Groundhog's Day, this slight fog that I felt in. And she said, no, I think you're thinking about it too much. And I thought, okay, well, she's the expert. I'm just the client. So her ill advice kept my gray area drinking going for a few more years. And it really wasn't until I listened to that small inner voice, our inner knowing, which I also talk about in the book. And as women, we have this sixth sense, our intuition, and it was screaming to me, please look at your drinking. This is not serving us. This is not, how we want to feel day in and day out. And I clicked on an ad because when I saw a video about this detox to retox gray area drinking, it was exactly what I had. And it wasn't this rock bottom, like you need to go to rehab or you need to get help. And I thought, oh my gosh, wait a second. There's somebody else out there that has this too, because I suffered silently and alone, thinking this must be my problem. In 2019, I know you got sober way before that, but in 2019, nobody was really talking about gray area drinking. It had just started to kind of come out on social media. And when I saw the ad for Sober Sis, I looked at it for a few months and I thought, I think this is me, but it's probably going to be me and like 3 other women. So I thought, I'll do this 21-day reset. I'll get some tools under my tool belt and I'll go back to being a normal drinker. And I got into this program and there were thousands of women, hundreds in my group. And I thought, whoa, why are there so many women here? What is going on? There's this many people that feel like I do. I thought I was completely alone in this. And what I came to find out is that this is an epidemic for women and moms in particular who are using alcohol as a permission slip to check out, as self-care. We aren't warned that it causes cancer on the labels. We are not told the truth about it. And we need community like which this program gave me. We need support. We're under supported in so many ways in our lives, and tools to regulate our nervous system in order to manage motherhood and work and life and the kids and marriage and all the things that life throws at you. And so I thought, well, there's got to be books on this, right? On gray area drinking. And again, I couldn't find any. And they say you write the book that you wish you could have read. And so I had started journaling about my sober curious journey. And really, to be honest with you, and I tell the readers this in the book, I didn't want to break up with alcohol. I thought I was really seriously gonna like get this moderation thing under control and figure this thing out and go back. And I think that's part of the journey. So if that's where you are in your journey, I think it's very normal. And I think you have to almost go kind of test the waters out if you're a gray area drinker and you're like, I'm not that bad, right? Like I can get this under control, especially when you do like a sober September or a dry January and you're like, see, I quit for 30 days. And that is what gray area drinkers do. We take many breaks and we go back. And what happens is when we go back, it may take longer for us to kind of get back to where we were, but we slide right back down that pitcher plant into its sweet nectar and go right back into our gray area of drinking. And we end up being in the same place that we were before. And it's a maddening place. And there's no freedom in it because you have to put all kinds of guardrails up to moderate. And so I just think that, gray area drinking is a very tricky space because you look like what most people are doing on a regular basis that is quote unquote normal. And what is a normal drinker, right? Like we know that you are a gray area drinker if you're like, give you an example. My in-laws will have like a beer to celebrate their birthday, and maybe like the 5 ounces, who measures? Nobody measures, but they literally do for like a Christmas. And that's all they'll really drink. Like they could literally take it or leave it. They don't really think about it. And then you have the end stage drinking where you need a medical detox, right? You've talked about this on your podcast. Like if you're having tremors and seizures and you need a medical detox, you are not a gray area drinker. But everybody in between those two spectrums is. And that is a vast, wide category. In my opinion, we're not talking enough about. And that's why I wrote the book.
Well, I have to say, for one, thank you. For two, because I did this in 2006, So I drank the exact way you did. Now, I didn't have I always say, and I've had people write about me all the time, like, okay, out there she was in, living in one of the most prominent neighborhoods in America. I grew up wearing my Gucci loafers with my parents having cocktail parties, and I knew both of my grandmothers had been labeled alcoholics, but they were great drinkers now, knowing, now that we have this terminology, but that was not around.
Yeah.
So my options for when I said, you know what? My whole thing was, I know I'm drinking too much. I was divorced. I had three little ones. I was having kind of life problems like you were, like all around me. Everything was imploding. Anxiety wasn't even a buzzword in 2006. Let's just be honest. Okay. Nobody talked about anxiety. That was not something you talked about. So realizing I was social, I'm like, I'm a very social human being. I love being out. I love the party. I love being at last call for alcohol. I was not at home drinking by myself, right? Like I was at every black tie function on the front pages of the social pages, but I always went home and I could, when I started, I couldn't stop, right?
Yeah.
So my only option was Alcoholics Anonymous.
Hmm. Which is a great program too. I'm not,
It is an amazing
thank
program.
God
And
we have so many different ways to get sober. I
well,
think,
now we do.
right.
Now we do. That's the word that we have to talk about, because the reality is that that was my only option, right? Because there was no way there was no groups. And I know Sober Sis because I had somebody reach out to me a couple years ago. She found me from Atlanta, and she saw me on Instagram, and she wrote to me, and she's like, I want you to talk to you. Will you talk to me? Will you take me through this journey? And I want to ask you a couple questions. One, is there alcoholism in your family?
So as far as this is really ironic question. My grandfather was a doctor for DuPont, which you know that name from Delaware. And he actually created and wrote the first book for Alcoholics Anonymous. Yep. It's a drinking problem. Yeah. This is like, it almost gives me chills because I feel like
I
my
just got
grandfather's,
them.
yeah, my grandparents' spirit. I never met my grandfather. He died the year before I was born, but he really brought substance abuse to the forefront as a treatable thing within DuPont to help all of these people who were struggling with alcoholism. And so, no, I didn't on that side. Now, on my dad's side, he had a lot of trauma, and yes, there was a lot of alcoholism and things on his side. So one can always kind of think there's probably a percentage of this that is genetic, right? That comes through genes. And we know it can be upwards of, I've heard 40 to 60%. I don't know the exact number, but my dad is diabetic, and my mom, she just kind of drank kind of like I did. I would say she's a gray area drinker. So my dad never really could too much because of his diabetes. But yeah, I think that there's an element of that. But yeah, I've been thinking about doing a post about my grandfather and how he started this, and just the ancestral, when we break this generational trauma, whether, in your family, it's alcoholism or not, it's a game changer for my kids and the kids for it. And so he wrote this book, and something, was set for me then to take it to the next level, where I am so grateful he did that work, because nobody was really talking about it at that time, in the 60s. And so, yeah, it's just the evolution of it just is so great. Like you had to do what you needed to do at that point, and now we have all of these different types of programs. And I just am grateful that we have so many. You just have to find your people and what speaks to you and where your story is. And that's why we need so many stories.
Well, I think I don't believe in coincidences. And I mean, that you don't mention that in your book about your
I
grandfather.
didn't know.
And
I
so knowing this, it is
just found it out.
so, oh my God, it did give
So
me
I
chills.
knew he
I'm
wrote a
like,
book, but I didn't have the actual book. And so I just got, my mom has it somewhere in a box, and my cousin ended up sitting next to me at a wedding, and he was like, "Oh my God, grandpa wrote a book about this." And I was like, "No, I want, like, can you please?" And he just mailed me a copy. So yeah, there's no coincidence about it. Like he's with me and he's like, yes, this is the next evolution of this, right? Like we have, so we both published a book in our family. Like, what are the chances? And I didn't even know.
Oh my God, Meg, that is amazing. And do you realize that back in the 60s, like with my grandmothers, because they were born in, 1913 and that generation, their women were not getting sober. I mean, right now, more women have alcoholism than ever before.
Right.
We now see how it's linked to so many cancers.
Yep.
It's poison. I mentioned on a podcast just recently that Jordan Peterson, the psychiatrist from Montreal, Canada, just came out with this. He's been sober since he was 27, and how the alcohol business actually promotes how hard it is. And I'm doing air quotes for people who are not watching this and just listening, that they promote how hard it is. And I want to be like, give you the middle finger, alcohol companies.
Yeah.
And guess what? We are going to change this. We are coming together.
Yes, the movement is happening. I mean, I just went on an all-inclusive vacation, and honestly, I was just hoping they would have Heineken 00 there or some option. Oh my God, they had non-alcoholic champagne, they had Seedlip, they had Heineken 00. They were like, what zero proof cocktail can we make you? And I was like, man, if this isn't a sign of the times changing, I don't know what is. And I'll be 4 years sober in November. And that was a first for me. I'm still having first. Primarily because I got sober right before the pandemic, so we couldn't do a lot. But it's happening, and with great suffering, I have that quote in my book. With great suffering comes great profit, and the big alcohol industry knows, especially for women, we are exhausted. We have this mental load that we cannot handle, and they're preying on it. They're preying on that vulnerability. They know it because the men, were they tapped out on all of that when the whiskey drinkers and all those things started changing. And so now you see them getting on this non-alcoholic bandwagon because they know, like, you better get on it or times are changing and you're going to be left in the dust. And so I just get so excited when I see all of these big celebrities and all these companies coming out with all these different types of drinks, that we are being included and seen, and that there's options now. When I thought I was alone in this. I really, really thought, man, nobody else feels as trapped as I do. I just felt like I was in a maddening Groundhog's Day. And I, I had no idea that so many people are trapped in this.
Well, and do you know what I find interesting? And I want to get your opinion on this. So you work in sales, and
Yes.
sales is a big, at least I know now, I'm going to, of course, date myself here. I know in the 90s that they used to like go all out. Like you could go to dinner at Trader Vic's or wherever, go to all the top restaurants and go back and charge it. It's still a huge drinking culture like it was.
So I'm in pharmaceutical sales, so I'll just speak to that. So back in the day, like you said, I mean, it was like if you didn't go to the bar, it was frowned upon. It was like you better be at the bar. And it was drinking all night and then going to the meetings in the morning completely hungover and like just being like, oh my God, I have to learn about all this science. And I have cobwebs in my head that I cannot get rid of, and I'm trying to focus. And that was just the way that you did it. And then really things have started to change where they started giving like drink tickets, like you could only get 2 drinks. And so then there's all these people that are used to drinking masses of amounts and binge drinking, and we're like, we can only have 2 drinks, but then you had to pay for it. So now my manager has read my book. He knows that I'm alcohol free. One of my teammates just read my book. She's like, you just got me sober. So, it's changing. And there's, he is like, I want to make sure you feel included, like you're okay. So he doesn't like really push the whole drinking scene. And I will tell you that I was recently on a sales trip, and I went to the bar and ordered a non-alcoholic mojito, and they didn't have any drinks on their menu. And so other than O'Doul's, and I'm sorry, O'Doul's, but I just can't. There's too many good options. And I was like, I'm not drinking O'Doul's. And I said, so just make me a non-alcoholic mojito. And they were a little like, we've never done this before. And like my whole sales team's there watching this, right? So at this point, I'm 3.5 years sober. So I don't care. Now, if that was my first week, I would have wanted to die and crawl under the bar and like hide.
Yes.
And shame on them because they made me feel othered. They were like, we're going to have to ring it up under a Shirley Temple. Like, made me feel like a kid having, like, the juice box at the bar. They could have charged me $14 for the drink. I think they charged me whatever Shirley Temple is, like $5 or $6. Their inventory was off. Like, if these restaurants and these hotels don't get on board, shame on them, because this movement is happening. And I didn't have any qualms about it, but I really think there is this assumption that everybody drinks. And I talk about it in the book. And when it was COVID and we had our national sales meeting online, they sent everybody a small bottle of Prosecco to toast the winners. And I thought, what if this went to somebody who is a Black, end stage drinker, who cannot have alcohol in their house? Now it just showed up at their door, right? No questions asked. And so when I left this all-inclusive resort, when we went on vacation, I gave them feedback and I said, when we walked in, there was champagne sitting on the table for us. You should ask your vacationers, do you drink or do you not drink, so that you put either the non-alcoholic champagne or the alcohol, like, or maybe they want water, like whatever it is that they're seen, because you want to make everybody feel included. And so these resorts and these hotels, like, get on board or you're going to be
You're going to be out of here. I love it. And did you write something to where you were, where they charged you for the kitty cocktail? Did you give a review?
I didn't do a review for them, but I have become more and more vocal. I will tell you, I was at a yoga class, and she was telling us to take these tennis balls into our hands and act like we had cocktails in our hands. And yoga is supposed to be a place where you're reconnecting with yourself and like healing and the whole holistic approach. And so I emailed the owner and I said, I have to tell you that for somebody who doesn't drink, and I don't consider myself like that I had a problem or anything, but I really, it got me out of that mindset of being there to heal myself, reconnect with myself. And now we're talking about alcohol, which is the furthest thing from all of that. So you can't, like, this whole wellness community that is throwing, yoga and champagne, or do a 30-mile bike ride and then go down all this beer. I'm speaking up now and saying, no, 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 no. Either you don't talk about it, which you shouldn't, because it's a cancer, it's a carcinogen, right? Like, why are we talking about a toxin at a wellness, fitness place? And so, yeah, I've been trying to, and she's like, thank you. I'm so glad that you told me this. I'll have a conversation with the yoga instructor. But it's just this assumption that I cannot stand, that we just all drink. And that's got to change, right? That's got to change.
Oh, that's why I've been doing this. That's why I've been doing this for 6 years, honey. I'm like, we got to change it. We got to change it. We keep running up the hill, and you are so helpful that you've done what you've done. I know, it's like, are you going to go smoke a cigarette? Like, we're lifting 2 packs of smokes as we.
It makes sense.
And I mean, I too, like, we went on our honeymoon everywhere, and we're at this nice place in Hawaii, and they're like, here's your champagne, and my husband's like, call him and tell him to get it out of here, because my husband's got 25 years, God willing, in a couple weeks of not drinking. So I want to ask you one other. I actually have to ask you 2 more questions. What would you say that you're a spiritual person?
Oh my gosh. Can I just say that since I've become alcohol free, I am so much more spiritual than I ever was, because to me, and I love Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about a God of her own understanding. And so whatever you believe, whether you use the term God, the universe, source, creator, to me, they're all one, and they live within us. And so when we can hear ourselves, our inner knowing, which is also God, right? And when we can hear that, we feel so much more connected to everyone and everything. And I had no idea that alcohol was literally corroding that connection to myself every day. I was in such a fog. I was so disconnected. I was so confused. Even the years I went to church and doing still all that drinking, I just didn't realize how disconnected I was spiritually to my own inner knowing and intuition. And now I see things every day, and I talk about it in the book. I call it finding the beauty in the day. And if you follow me on Instagram, I post almost every day about these miracles that are around us, and sunsets and flowers and birds. And I collect heart rocks and I find them all the time, because it is a way of the universe, and God created the universe, right? It is a way of it saying to you, you are being held and loved, and you are love, and God is love, and the universe is love, and we're all here to love each other. And so when I was drinking, I just wasn't seeing all these little messages. I get angel numbers all the time because I'm on the road, and they're in license plates all the time. And I just feel like the universe is constantly sending me these messages like, you're, we're connected, we're one, we're together. And when I was drinking, I couldn't feel that. I couldn't see that. I didn't notice it. It is the best gift that sobriety has given me, is that.
So I'm going to give you a couple little things. Well, you know Elizabeth Gilbert's sober.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you know that AA, when Alcoholics Anonymous was written, one of the best things that Bill Wilson, who wrote it, wrote about was finding a higher power of your own. Okay, so there's a lot of atheists that listen and people that don't believe,
Mhm.
and that's where I think the spirituality is such a big deal.
Yeah.
Knowing that something's bigger than you. And
Yeah.
the other thing, when you were mentioning your soul,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that, you probably do, that it was called this, and in Pennsylvania, it's still called the Wine and Spirit Store, right?
Mhm.
So alcohol is a spirit.
Right.
So if we ingest this liquid, and I'm not showing a bottle, obviously, I'm showing water, but it's liquid, um, into our bodies, that darkens our soul. And I related my soul when I was drinking to, if you go, especially in downtown Philadelphia, or if you're in Europe and you go to a church and you see a stained glass window and it's filled with soot, right? You can see that behind that soot is a really beautiful window, right? But it's been there for years and years, not cleaned. But when we get sober, we clean off the soot and
So
the
beautiful.
sun can come in.
And all the colors, it's like technicolor instead of gray that comes through that stained glass with all the colors. I love it. Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, alcohol is a low vibration. So if you're somebody who believes in energy, right, and you're not into a spirituality, it is the lowest vibration of something we can ingest, that is just adding to our exhaustion, adding to our anxiety and depression. And so who wants the more of that? Nobody. We want peace and simplicity and freedom and contentment and connection. And you get all of that by being alcohol free, not by ingesting a spirit, like you said. I love that analogy though.
And then here's my last question. Do you believe in miracles? And have
Oh,
you ever experienced one?
100%. Well, first of all, I feel that all of those little things that I mentioned that I see in my day are miracles, right? I mean, it just is true beauty and a miracle. Um, So, as far as a miracle for me, I have to go back to, I had infertility with both of my kids. Both of my kids are in vitro. And I tried for 2 years to get my daughter.
Mm.
And it was a really big roller coaster. It was very emotionally up and down for me. And I finally got pregnant through in vitro, and we got a false positive that she was going to have one of these 10 syndromes. And I remember I was driving on the freeway, and the infertility clinic called me and said, your test came back positive, and here are the 10 different syndromes that she possibly could have. And I had to pull over. I was hyperventilating, crying. Like, I had prayed for this baby, and she could die at childbirth was one of the syndromes, right? And I just thought, I don't know if I'm strong enough. I don't know if I can do this. And I opened my Bible. I fell to my knees when I got home, and I said, God, I will do anything give her Hunter syndrome where she just can't have children, like whatever it is, but please let this baby, come up here alive. And like and my husband and I were both we cried every day for 2 weeks. And I had to have the CVS, which has its own risk of a miscarriage. But that's when we found out, and it was a miracle, right? That nothing was wrong with her, that she was completely healthy. And this is again where the universe was speaking to me. So from the day I found out I was pregnant, there was a baby bunny in my backyard. And every day I watched that little baby bunny come into my backyard and just sit there and like look at me looking at it in my sunroom. And I was like, why is this one little baby bunny visiting here every day? And I came to find out that bunnies are a sign of safety and abundance. And so that bunny came for 9 months, the whole time I was pregnant. So her whole nursery was painted with bunnies, and bunnies are one of my spirit animals. So whenever I see a bunny, that was like, I felt like God was like, I've got you. It's okay. You are safe. You are going to be abundant. She's going to be fine. And, we have so many things in life where we feel so uncertain and we're so scared. You just did a podcast on, or I listened to one about fear. And that is when I feel like the miracle shows up, the baby bunny to be like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Trust me. I've got you. And so whenever I see a bunny, I think about that miracle.
That was beautiful. And I'm tearing because I'm like, because I'm a mommy, even though they're all grown up and flown the coop. They were like, we don't call you mommy anymore, mom. I'm like, I get it. But, giving your kids this gift of sobriety. I can tell you this, when I was raising my kids and, raising teenagers, it's hard, right? It's hard. And you're telling them, don't go. And I can't even imagine with the social media you guys have to deal with. And I always send you guys like the best vibes because it's got to be so hard. And especially, and not that boys don't have a hard time, but girls, it's like, it's really hard, right? It's really, really hard. And you'll never regret because you say, don't drink. And I always found it interesting when parents be like, don't drink, but then they're going, not saying that that's bad. If you want to do that, that's your story. And I'm not judging you.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like monkey see, monkey do.
Right. They're watching.
They're watching like we watched.
Yes. Like we watched the cocktail parties, right? Those messages are being ingrained. Those seeds are being planted.
Oh, I remember, and I want to ask because I remember being a little girl wanting I couldn't wait till I could be a grown up and be in a pretty dress and serving cocktails like my mom did. And she was so happy at that party. Other times, maybe not so happy, right? But at that time, she was always happy having the party, having the drink in her hand. And I was like, I can't wait.
Yep. Yep. Monkey see, monkey do. You're absolutely right. I mean, I am showing and modeling to my kids that you can have a really great time without it. That when life gets really hard, I mean, the mommy wine culture is literally sending messages to our children that God, you are really a pain. I need a drink because of you. Mommy wine, or my kids wine, so mommy wines. I mean, that message is horrific. And if you think about it, like you're saying that your children are a burden, you can't handle them, that they make you drink, and so I thought to myself, and I talk about this at the end of the book, a story where I was quarantined in Aruba with Ashley because she got COVID and trying to get out of the country and having all the fear and all the anxiety and all the running around the airport with the testing and all the things we were doing. Was I a hot mess? Yep. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Mom was nervous. Mom had anxiety. And guess what? And we were fine. We got through. We made it. And I did it without a drink. And she saw me handle it. And she saw me handle it without a drink. Was it perfect? No. But you can do hard things without alcohol. And in fact, it's easier in the end. And so I just want my kids to know that they are not the reason, I drank. And if I have any regret, is the times where I was so tired and hungover and, lethargic because of my so-called rewarding, and I'm doing the air quotes for anybody who's listening, wine. Like, if you're too tired to play with your kids and it's waking you up at 3 a.m. and you're not getting sleep and you're feeling a little bit out of it all day, how is that a reward? We have to start asking ourselves these questions. Like, this is not helping things. This is making everything 10 times harder, especially in motherhood. And I just want my kids to see how beautiful life can be without it.
Oh, well, you are doing it.
Oh,
You did it by writing this book. You guys go out there, get this. If you're thinking about, am I a great drinker? Am I in the early stages? Am I in the late stages? She Meg, the way you describe things, I could totally relate. I thank you so much. I thank your grandfather way back when,
right?
right? So amazing. And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And for everybody listening, you're going to be able to see how you can get in touch with Meg in the description. You can follow her. I'm going to have all those links on there. So please check out the description. Thank you again for coming on.
Oh, Elizabeth, I loved our conversation. Thank you so much for having me. I could talk to you all day.
I know you're amazing. Well, you guys, thanks for listening. And please come back. And, I'll always be here and keep getting busy living soba. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.